Really interesting fight kicking off our main card at middleweight, and I would not blink in this one for a second. We have Maki Pitolo taking on the Cuban Missile Crisis, Julian Marquez. So is Coconut Bombz better than the Cuban Missile Crisis in terms of nicknames? They're both great, but the one thing I can tell you is that Julian Marquez, he says on Twitter, he's going to walk out to the song Heart of Glass, but the Miley Cyrus version. Matt, growing up, listen, if Blondie came on the radio, I wouldn't switch the channel, but I never knew the words to that one. I always just thought it was... If somebody asks me how that song goes, that's all I have for you.
You might get a copyright strike because of that.
I might, but who knows? Blondie, I mean nothing but the best. And for Miley Cyrus, I actually really like the version. I think it's a pretty good tune. It will hopefully be a Tom Lawler-like walkout, PFL zone. But I look at this fight as, yes, there's probably going to be a finish in this one. If you look so far at Julian Marquez's pro career, it's Finish City. 5 by knockout, 2 wins by submission. For Maki Pitolo, again, pretty much all the same. 7 wins by knockout, 3 by submission, 3 by decision. But it's been a mixed bag for these guys. And I look at their losses. For Maki Pitolo, he beats Cassius Kane with victory, and then they rematch that fight, and he loses by knockout. He gets finished by gay porn star Dakota Cochran. He loses to Callum Potter in his UFC debut. Not a good look. He beats Charles Byrd, who's no longer in the UFC. He loses to Darren Stewart by finish. He loses a decision in Kasanganai. He just didn't look himself in that Kasanganai fight. Like, it wasn't a great look. And that's the thing. Impa Kasanganai just always pushes a pace. He always lands heavy. I know he's on a poster because of the fight that he had against Joaquin Buckley, but Impa Kasanganai's still a good fighter. That's his only pro loss. And the one thing that he does really well, puts together combinations. He'll wear on you. He can wrestle too. That's kind of what Julian Marquez can do to an extent.
Here's the thing. We mention this every time we talk about Kelvin Gastelum and Michael Bisping, so we have to mention this when we talk about Maki Pitolo. The reason Gastelum looked so good against Bisping was he was just coming off a loss to GSP right before that in a fight where he took quite a bit of damage. Maki Pitolo against Darren Stewart, only 3 weeks before that fight, had a crazy back-and-forth one-round fight where
he got cracked.
Exactly. He hurts Stewart, Stewart hurts him, and he ends up getting submitted. I understand he didn't look great against Kasanganai, but there's a pretty good excuse for that. He just got off of a really crazy fight, and I understand, listen, he's the one who accepted the fight. It's his fault. But there's a bit of an excuse for why you don't look good against Impa Kasanganai when you just come out of a crazy 3-minute war against Darren Stewart.
And you know what? Let's, kind of back up the train a little bit. The fight against Callum Potter was at welterweight, and obviously he had a hard time making the weight. I know he weighed in at 170 pounds on the nose, but a lot of people attributed that loss to the weight cut. The other thing, though, if you look at his last weigh-in against Impa Kasanganai, 184.5, against Darren Stewart, 186, and then a fight against Charles Byrd, he weighed in at 185.5. So he's not the biggest fighter at middleweight, only 5'10", 73 inches of reach. If you look at Julian Marquez coming back on the other side, 6'2", 72 inches of reach. It's been a long time since we've seen Julian Marquez. His last fight was in July of 2018. He lost a split decision to Alessio Di Chirico, so I had to go back and watch the fight. It was really close. The other thing about that fight, and if you want to knock Julian Marquez for, a diminished output and this and that, he completely tore his latissimus dorsi muscle in that fight. And that was the reason that he hasn't fought since. And he had a terrible road to recovery, a terrible surgery. The doctor said that he would never fight again. And here he comes back. He's like that cat. The cat came back the very next day. Cat came back. You thought he was a goner, but the cat came back. And listen, this is a guy that has a great podcast, and I'm not joking, with Kendra Lust. And if you, for a second, go, I don't know who Kendra Lust is, you know who Kendra Lust is. Don't say that. So, Julian Marquez coming into this one, you look at his way or his path to the UFC. He loses to Chris Harris in Bellator, and then he rings off big finish wins. He finishes, Matt the Hammer Hamill. He beats Cameron Olson. He beats Phil Haas, finishes him on Dana White's Contender Series the first season. He was one of those big stars coming off the Contender Series. Has a wicked fight against Darren Stewart, finishes him. And then he loses that split decision to Alessio Di Chirico, and he goes away for a long time. He was supposed to take on Saprabeg Safarov back in November. Safarov couldn't do the weight cut. Saprabeg Safarov, happy trails, no longer in the UFC. So now we get this fight. These guys are very well evenly matched, I think, and it's really tough to try and analyze Julian Marquez's game because he's been away for so long.
I have no idea who's going to win this fight, and I never say that, but just the honest truth, because this fight's going to go one of two ways. Either Julian Marquez is going to somehow not get knocked out from the immense power that Maki Pitolo brings, can just kind of outlast Pitolo and wear on him, and maybe he'll be able to get a finish himself, but it kind of works both ways, because neither one of these guys are cardio kings by any means. Maki Pitolo, if he does throw really heavy power, let's say he is able to drop Marquez, and Marquez is really damaged, the Marquez is just going to be tired for the rest of the fight, and Pitolo's probably going to knock him out. The flip side, though, is if Pitolo just kind of blows his load in that first round, isn't able to get the finish, Marquez could be able to just kind of zombie his way back into this fight. Neither guy are known for their phenomenal cardio, but both guys could get that early finish. It will be interesting, and like you had said, it's been such a long time since we have seen Marquez in the cage. What version of him will we see? And it could go one of two ways. Right now, I see it like this. I think he's going to come back. He was already a fairly hittable fighter in his first round. Dhiego was able to hit him. Darren Stewart was able to really hit him. Now, again, Darren Stewart, really good striker, but still, if you're eating shots from Darren Stewart and you're eating shots from Dhiego, I'm worried a little bit about your ability to eat a big shot from Maki Pitolo. And again, it's not like Pitolo skill-wise is this really dangerous striker, but he does have big power at this weight class, and he throws massive looping shots. If Marquez is back with any level of ring rest, he might be a little bit too slow and he might eat one of those big shots from Pitolo. On the flip side, though, if Maki Pitolo shows up just looking for the knockout punch and we do see a more refined version of Julian Marquez, I do believe Marquez could go out there, just be defensively sound and get past that first round and then sort of implement his will as the fight progresses. But right now, I do think Pitolo is going to win this.
To me, the big statement when if you really want to see a blueprint for Maki Pitolo, it's a fight against Charles Byrd. That's really a good one for him. He was able to implement the takedown. The fight against Callum Potter, he was taken down again. That one was at 170 and not 185. The fight against Darren Stewart took a ton of punishment, got finished in that one. The fight against Sanganai took a lot of punishment. I don't love to look into the stats, especially on like a kill or be killed type of fighter. He has a positive strike differential in terms of significant strikes landed and taken, but 4.87 to 4.0 taken, that's a lot of punishment, especially through a young career in the UFC. It's not that, I'm overly surprised if I look at Julian Marquez, 3.8 given to 3.33 taken, but he's been off for a long time, so you know that at least his chin hasn't been cracked that much, as long as he hasn't been getting knocked out at Topgolf or in gym or in camp. So again, I look at this one in terms of the odds, maybe a little bit of a surprise that Julian Marquez minus 185 at open. Now he's minus 180 for Maki Pitolo open plus 160. Now he's at a plus 149. And if we have a look at the total Tapology votes, Matt, I had a look earlier on in the day, and really 86% of 677 total votes going with Marquez. And listen, 57% have him to win by knockout. For the 14% that pick Pitolo, it's a large percentage, 53% thinking that he's going to win by knockout. So I'm going to go with Julian Marquez. Again, I think coming back off that surgery, he's had a long layoff, getting ready for it. He was in camp getting ready for Saprabeg Safarov. Listen, Saprabeg Safarov was one of the worst fighters in the
He's
UFC.
awful.
He was not very good. The Nick Negromoneno win was like the biggest Steve Nash finger roll layup I've ever seen in my life. But you're getting ready for a fight like that. You at least had the chance to get into the camp, to start the weight cut. It wasn't an issue. Now you get a couple months off. You get to get ready for a fight against Maki Pitolo where you haven't taken that damage. I like Marquez in this fight. I like his striking. I like his defensive wrestling and his offensive grappling as well. And I know Maki Pitolo's had good offensive numbers. And for Julian Marquez, he's been more on the defensive than he has been in the offensive in the UFC. But I think his striking is just so powerful. And I think he's really going to cause problems for Maki Pitolo in this fight. But you're right. Such a volatile matchup here with the unknown of Marquez coming back into this one and the highs and lows of Maki Pitolo so far in the UFC that I wouldn't bet with confidence on this one. It's a pop and popcorn fight if there ever was.
And here's the thing. I think I would be in agreement with you if Julian Marquez did have that warm-up fight against Saprabeg Safarov. If he did just have that one fight coming back where he does get hit a little bit and he just kind of readjusts himself to the cage, I'd have a lot more confidence picking him. But just the way right now, I do think the ring rust might end up... We're going to see him get caught at some point, and I think Pitolo will be able to take advantage. But again, zero confidence in this fight. The definition of a pop and popcorn.
This is one of those ones that somebody comes back and calls you a donkey in the comments. And go for it. Let us know who you're going with because there's such a spread in the votes over on Tapology. Matt has Pitolo. I have Julian Marquez to get the win. Overall, there should be a finish in this one. I mean, you see it from the defensive stats for Marquez. 3 submissions on average per fight. He had the 2 against Dhiego, 3 against Stewart, 1 against Hawes. It's an amazing percentage. I'm really looking forward to this fight. It should be a great one. Again, both of us going in opposite directions. You're with Pitolo, I'm with Marquez, and a great card headlined by Kamaru Usman taking on Gilbert Burns for that welterweight title. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.